All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding Surah 26, which is known as the Poets. But listen, we aren't going to look at this as just some collection of ancient fables or pretty poetic verses. What really fascinated me in our source material is that it doesn't read like standard theology at all. It reads way more like a highly organized, algorithmic blueprint of human behavior and systemic friction. It's like a functional schematic. So let's unpack it together. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're decoding the clear book. Second, we'll look at the messenger's true burden. Third, we dive into the repeating historical algorithm. Fourth, the 7 archetypes of corruption. And finally, number 5, the grounded versus the wandering.
Moving right into our first section, decoding the clear book, where we contrast the traditional view with the actual textual reality.
You know, traditionally, a lot of folks have viewed this text simply as a bunch of supernatural historical stories, basically designed to frighten people into obedience. But here's the thing. When you actually apply an algorithmic lens to the text, a cross-referencing method called tasrif, it reveals something entirely different. It acts as a functional blueprint. It meticulously details the repeatable friction points between entrenched systemic tyranny and absolute truth. It isn't about fear at all. It's literally an operational manual for understanding exactly why societies collapse.
Okay, Section 2, the messenger's true burden. And this is all about delivery, not compulsion.
To really get this operational manual, we have to look at the massive psychological weight placed on the system operator, the messenger. The text opens with this incredibly empathetic acknowledgement. It says, "Perhaps you will destroy yourself with grief that they do not become believers." I mean, it totally recognizes the profound burnout and sheer exhaustion that comes with trying to wake up a deliberately unconscious society. The messenger is essentially wearing himself down against a brick wall of a system.
But right after that, the text drops a major correction. It tells the messenger that, sure, forced biological submission from the sky is entirely possible, but doing that completely defeats the entire purpose of human consciousness. The messenger has to realize that their job is mere delivery. That's it. Trying to force compliance, or carrying the massive emotional burden of the outcome, that's a glitch in the system. The role is absolute clarity, never compulsion.
And to understand the message that's actually being delivered, we really need to define a core concept here, Rabb al-Alamin. Now, it's usually translated as the Lord of the Worlds. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, our source defines it as the sustainer of all systems. This is absolutely crucial. It's not some abstract theology or a tribal identity. It's the dynamic, active source of observable reality. So when a messenger invokes this, it's a direct threat to artificial human authority, like Pharaoh claiming he's the ultimate sovereign, for example. It grounds the message entirely in the real, physical, observable world.
Which brings us to Section 3, the repeating historical algorithm, where the pattern itself is the sign.
This is where things get really fascinating. The text shifts into this mechanical loop. It lays out a strict 4-step algorithmic pattern that repeats identically across completely different societies and eras. Step 1. Clear guidance comes to a people. Step 2. The people resist, and they do this specifically to protect their inherited systems and economic interests. Step 3. Natural, structural consequences follow that rejection. And Step 4. The repeating pattern itself becomes the ultimate sign. And just to prove how structural this whole thing is, this exact phrase repeats exactly 8 times throughout the text. 8 times. That is no accident. It is driving home the reality that human resistance to truth isn't just some random occurrence. It's a highly predictable mechanical cycle. The sign isn't just some flashy miracle or a disastrous consequence. The real sign is the predictable and frankly stubbornly human fact that people will always cling to their inherited systems, even when they blatantly contradict observable truth. So across all iterations of this loop, every single messenger calls the people to the exact same thing, taqwa. Now, this is often translated simply as fear, but actually, scratch that, it's much deeper. Our source clarifies that taqwa actually means an active, conscious awareness and protective mindfulness. It has absolutely nothing to do with performing empty rituals. It's about actively waking up to reality as it actually is, and then structurally aligning your behavior with it.
All right, Section 4, 7 archetypes of corruption. Let's look at the repeating case studies.
This whole framework builds out into 7 distinct case studies of societal failure. And what's totally mind-blowing here is how perfectly ancient history maps onto modern systemic corruption. We see Musa confronting Pharaoh, which is the ultimate archetype of systemic tyranny and manufactured illusion. Then you have Ibrahim confronting ancestral statues, basically the symbol of blind imitation. New faces off against hierarchical elitism, where the wealthy ignore the truth simply because the lower classes accept it. We also see this scale from Hood's empty materialistic monumentalism to Salih's fight against resource monopolies, all the way to Shu'ayb taking on systemic economic fraud. It's wild. Every major modern institutional failure is mapped out perfectly right here.
And in every single one of these case studies, the entrenched systems use the exact same predictable playbook to invalidate the message. They never actually engage with the truth. Instead, they rely on inherited tradition, literally arguing, well, we found our fathers doing this. If that doesn't work, they hurl accusations of madness. And when they completely lose the argument, they just pivot to physical violence. But underneath it all, they're really just protecting their entrenched economic and hierarchical interests. The message isn't rejected because it lacks clarity, right? It's rejected because it threatens the status quo.
So, how do you cut through all this institutionalized resistance? Every single messenger repeats this exact phrase, "I do not ask you for payment." This is a profound structural requirement. Think about it. By demanding no financial dependency, the messenger bypasses institutionalized priesthoods entirely. You literally cannot buy the truth, and the person delivering it isn't profiting off of you. It's the ultimate safeguard to make sure the message remains totally uncompromised by economic manipulation.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the grounded versus the wandering. We are breaking down the anatomy of speculative language.
And this totally brings us to why this entire blueprint is named The Poets. The text masterfully contrasts the ungrounded, maze-like philosophical wandering of the poets with the direct functional action of the messengers. The poets represent speculative language. They're wandering aimlessly in theoretical valleys, saying things they don't actually do in real life. Their words are completely severed from functional action. The messengers, however, represent unmediated truth. With them, there is a strict, accountable alignment between what is spoken and how one behaves.
But the source material doesn't just leave us hanging in with a critique. It provides a precise antidote to this aimless, poetic theorizing. To avoid wandering in these valleys of speculation, the text says we must become secure in structural alignment, actively execute real structural corrections in the world, maintain an abundant, grounded awareness, and actively defend against being wronged. It's demanding real-world action, not just beautiful, empty words.
So here's the ultimate question this explainer leaves us with, and it forces us to really examine our own approach to truth today. Are we simply wandering in the valleys of our own speculative words and endless online theories, or are our daily actions fundamentally and structurally aligned with reality? It's a heavy question. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Think on that, and I'll see you in the next one.